Discussion on Senate substitute for Senate Committee, substitute for House Committee, substitute for House Bill 2014. Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker to microphone, not my own.
Is your microphone occupied?
It is. It's going to be, and I just wanted to
proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Thank you. So here we are, 3 weeks after the last time we met, taking up a critical supplemental budget bill, and I think it's easy to say, or it's probably a correct statement to say that this may be one of the most important supplemental budget bills that we've seen in the history of Missouri. What you're seeing before you today is close to a $5.7 billion package, with most of that funding coming down from the federal government. And I kind of want to give what I consider kind of a 30,000-foot overview. So in general, we're appropriating the federal funds as if we have the ability to draw all the federal Family First dollars and all the CARE dollars down during the remainder of FY20. So the plan is to use a significant amount of those funds for the COVID-19 response, and as much of the remaining funds as possible to backfill or supplant general revenue. The Family First increased FMAP, which is the Enhanced Medicaid Reimbursement from the feds of 6.2%, is already being drawn down, and that will basically mimic general revenue to the tune of $316 million, or an amendment amount at $350 million, as it appears in the bill. This money will supplant GR and will basically reduce the need for additional withholds in FY20. The CARES Act represents much more money coming to Missouri. We're waiting from guidance from several federal departments on how that CARES Act money can be used. The largest amount, which is $2.3 billion, that Missouri may receive through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, is to be used for coronavirus-related expenditures. The Treasury Department will be creating the guidance for that fund, and like every other state in the union right now, and every local county and local municipality across the country, we all collectively hold our breath that that guidance is as broad as possible and as least restrictive as statute currently allows. That guidance is expected towards the end of April 24th. And that federal funding for the CARES Act, especially that large pot, will likely start coming around the same time that the guidance is issued. Now that money, according to the CARES Act, will need to be spent by December 30th, 2020. So we're talking about appropriations right now for FY20. We'll be talking, I would assume, when we resume conversation on FY21, that we'll be having that same conversation as we move into FY21 budgeting process again. I'd like to think that we'd be able to draw down, spend, and backfill GR with their coronavirus relief funds and other pots of money in the Coronavirus Act, but that's not guaranteed, and it's probably not possible to the extent we have appropriated. The supplemental budget represents the best case scenario for maximize all of the federal funds. It sets up our ability to freeze a good amount of general revenue for the remainder of fiscal year 20, move that money to reserve in order to brace for very significant decreases in general revenue in FY21. Again, it appears as a $5.7 billion plan, but that's a bit misleading. The numbers include some inflated amendments and a chunk of state general revenue that we use to plug in case the federal guidance sets certain funds as not allowable expenses. Also, the supplemental sets aside approximately $1.07 billion for local efforts. And as it's spelled out in the CARES Act currently, 2 counties in the state of Missouri, which is Jackson County and St. Louis County, would qualify for those funds as written in the CARES Act. Those two entities combined would receive approximately $300 million. Now, like everyone else in the General Assembly, not currently representing Jackson or St. Louis County, we're all hoping that the executive branch will use discretion and will distribute funds to other local counties, other local municipalities all across the state as they all respond to COVID-19, and also as they see their budgets take a significant hit due to decreased sales tax collection, due to decreased income tax collection, and other budgetary effects and impacts that we've seen in the economy. So, at this time that there's great uncertainty in the public health arena, there's obviously great uncertainty in the economic forecasting and projection as well. With a lack of guidance from the federal government at this point on how this money can be spent by the state, we are appropriating, again, the best case scenario. Something else is that we have handed over a tremendous amount of power and authority, flexibility to the executive branch with this FY20 supplemental budget. And considering the unprecedented moment we all face, I think that that's acceptable, and I think that that's a good use of our FY20 supplemental time. And as we send over a budget that has great flexibility for using these funds, depending on the guidance from the federal government, we would ask that the executive branch remember the local health departments who are really underfunded at the state level across the board, and all of their efforts to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on communities all across the state. Hopefully DHSS will work with the public health agencies and get as much money out to them as possible, as well as our local governments at the county level, at the city level. It's also important the DHSS and others in executive remember our FQHCs, among other healthcare providers out there. FQHCs are really providing a tremendous amount of services to some of our most low-income individuals across the state and most vulnerable citizens. The community health centers are our safety net in both urban and rural Missouri, and most of the patients have Medicaid or even no insurance at all. The FQHCs are currently struggling, and they're responding to the COVID-19 by testing, providing telehealth services, maintaining contact with their patients to keep up with to keep pressure off of our hospitals and emergency departments and intensive care units and other healthcare providers. But they're also seeing decrease in visits because of fears of COVID-19 due to elective procedures and other healthcare related issues kind of taking a back seat as we all respond to COVID-19. And they've seen a dramatic drop in revenue, and it threatens their ability to maintain access. So I would encourage DHSS to work with our FQHCs across the state to make sure that they receive adequate funding. And I'd also put in an ask to our federal delegation. I know that Senator Blunt watches out for FQHCs a lot. I'd ask that as they work on this next round of stimulus, that they make sure to make the FQHCs whole throughout this process. Now, as we switch gears from FY20 and resume FY21 talks, I'd ask that while we've provided great flexibility and we've been very accommodating with the executive branch, which is critical, we've provided great flexibility in the supplemental budget. I'd ask as we change gears to FY21 that we, as a General Assembly, work with the executive branch. The executive branch work with us on coming up with a consensus revenue estimate and begin trying to forecast for FY21 as soon as possible. And I'm sympathetic to the fact that forecasting for revenue for FY21 is going to be very challenging in these unprecedented times, but the exercise and the outcome of a consensus revenue estimate process is vital to our state's current and future financial health. It's critical to the budgeting process, and it's necessary to build an adequate and fiscally responsible FY21 budget. The General Assembly's involvement in reaching consensus on which our FY21 budget will be built is necessary for maintaining the balance of power between our two respective branches of government. So this is an ask of the executive as we move forward. I hope that we can resume consensus revenue estimate talks and move forward with FY21 as appropriately and as safely as possible, so that the General Assembly can produce, yet again, a budget that is close to balanced as possible, even in these difficult situations. Thank you.